paying attention to this right now, which you may very well not be because it's not for you, that's fine, but I'm asking that you're just quiet. If you want to add eyebrows, and if you're at the point where you're done with your face and you want to add eyebrows, what I'll tell you is you can mix color, or you could just use the straight up colors out of the off the little pieces of clay. Brown, light brown, you can mix black and brown. I mix black and brown together for this one over here, and you already know how to mix it. And obviously, just like before, what I'll tell you again is that you really don't need much. Now, it's not vitally important, but I still do believe that generally the best way to do these things is to start off with equal amounts of clay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll a really, really thin sort of roll of clay here. Idea is that when I press this into the face and flatten it out a little bit, all it's ever going to do is get thicker and thicker. So what I would tell you is when you make your little roll of clay, I would roll it out to be thinner than what you need. One of the things that we should do is not attach it until it's exactly the way you want it. Like, we don't want to press it into the face until it's exactly the way you want it. When we do press it into the face a little bit, all it's ever going to do is get thicker and thicker. So, that being said, if you make them too thin, it's probably better. We can always make them a little thicker looking. We can always push them in a little bit more and make them look a little wider. But it's very, very hard to go back there and clean them up and make them thinner. All you can do is if you put too thick, heavy, like Groucho Marx eyebrows on this thing, is scrape them off, clean all this stuff up, and do it again. So, again, when you roll out your clay, roll out a little piece and roll it a little bit thinner than you think it should be. You can always kind of compare it on the actual face for what you might think you need the eyebrow for. Again, we're going to make 2 of these things. I don't know exactly how long I'm going to need them to be, but I am better off starting with 2 equal parts of clay. All right? Even if I want to trim this down and everything else like that, I'm still better off using 2 equal parts of clay. I want to work on one of them at a time. I've got my little piece of eyebrow over here. Oops. What I want to do is I want to pick one end and I want to make it a little thinner. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of press in with my finger over here, and I want to kind of get this to sort of taper into a sort of point. I don't know if you've seen exactly what I did over there, but rolling my finger on this one end, I've sort of left one side completely alone. I got this other side that's sort of like tapered down into a nice fine point. This fine point and everything is most likely going to be the outside edge of my brow. Okay? So when I'm going here to kind of fit things, I can kind of shape this a little bit to kind of see how it's going to fit. Now, some people, like in this particular picture, have a little bit longer brows. Some have shorter. So I want to kind of rough fit it over here. I never want to press any of this into the actual thing until I feel pretty good about where it's at. All right. I'm going to go ahead right now, and I'm just going to take my tool, and I'm just going to cut off a little bit of that. Okay. I know right now this is probably going a little too far this way. Yes, you can go. But I'm going to leave a little extra material for right now while I start working on the other one. Again, take your other piece. You could do the opposite side, or you could just do the same side and flip it. But we're going to take that one side, we're going to roll our finger on it until we kind of taper that down into a nice little fine point. And again, that fine point is most likely going to be your outside edge. Now, mattering on the type of brows you're trying to make, you know, you might have slightly thicker ones, slightly thinner ones, but if you keep them all relatively thin, we can always kind of stretch them out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and sort of rough fit this onto the face, trying to figure out exactly where I want to lay it down. And again, don't press one in and then make the other one. Try to do them all at the same time. I'm going to take the sharp end of my white tool and just kind of trim a little bit off this one. Again, being careful I don't get any extra clay on there. And what I'm going to try to do again is, before I add brows, is make sure whatever I've added over here looks to me to be as symmetrical as possible. All right, if I made them too long or too short, maybe I made them a little bit too long or too short, I'm going to just kind of take them off carefully, move them in a little bit, and just kind of do my little adjustments before I make them part of this actual sculpture. Okay. Next, I want to kind of trim this down to where it needs to be. Again, this is going to be a little bit different for each and every one of you. So we kind of take our tool and just get rid of a little bit of that clay. Again, if you get any of that little extra mess stuff, just try to scrape it off. Clean it up the best you can. Okay. We'll take a look at her particular face. She's got a little bit of an arch to her brow. So what I want to do is kind of find where that arch is going to be and try to use my tool a little bit to sort of shape this a little bit. Do the same thing on the other side. Carefully try to gently kind of move it into place. And again, the key with these things is don't press them into the face of this thing until you think they are where they need to be. Okay. Do you feel good about that? Okay. All right. If I got them the way I want them and everything looks good, I'm going to gently start pressing them into the head a little bit. When you're doing this, again, a little bit at a time. You don't want to overly smush them into the head, because as you're doing this, the only thing that's going to happen is that the brows themselves are just going to get wider looking and wider looking. So again, take your time with this. The thicker you want them, the more you press them in. I would suggest that the parts that are closer to the middle of the face get pressed in just a little bit more. The parts on the outside get pressed in a little bit less. If you want to get really sort of, I guess, detailed with it and everything else like that, you can always take the edge of your tool and kind of hit it with the edge a little bit and give them a little bit of a texture to the edge of the brow. If you could see kind of what I'm doing right there. Maybe you can't see, but I'll show you when I walk it around. I'm just taking the tool right now and I'm just gently sort of tapping it in there to create a little bit of line. I'll leave this side alone and show you when I walk around so you can see what a finished side looks like versus the unfinished side. But here's my little eyebrow. Okay. The one side I put a little texture into. Don't press them in until you feel like they're good to go. Clean up. You did not. You kind of finish yours up tomorrow. What?